Hi, Ross. We're just doing the live stream just for you. So if we just kill some time for a minute while everybody else sorts their lives out and tries to get round the complete mess that I've made of sorting out this live stream this evening. Okay, there's 3 now, so we're getting there. Okay. Apologies, everybody, for the complete hash-up I've made this evening of the live stream. That's because of my own incompetence with YouTube. So clearly I need to do some more effort. So, and following on from that, I will add that Ross Thomas won't be joining us right now. He'll be joining us in about 20 minutes at 8:30. So what we're going to do is Darren's going to drop out and then Ross is going to come in and then you'll all be able to ask Ross some questions. And the good thing about Ross is Ross runs a business building cars. So whereas you normally get myself and perhaps Darren talking about when we get asked questions and we say we don't know about suspension and stuff like that, Ross will be all over it. So that, you know, that's what one of the reasons we brought him on is because he can answer questions that we can't, because we tend to just really I love that. I've just saw the message about Harvey Price. Arnold Schwarzenegger is back. Deary me. So we tend to focus on engines, tuning, and the mechanical bits and pieces, whereas Ross will help us with all the other questions about building cars and what's best, etc. for your application. So, wow, we've got 20 people. That's fantastic already. Apologies for the bad start again for those who've only just joined. I made a complete hash of it. Okay, so Ross Thomas will be on from about 8:30. So I think we better start off with what's new this week. What's new for you, Darren?
Let's see. Well, I just posted up the it's a 6-parter on that single point car that I had in the garage. And it had actually some interesting problems I hadn't really noticed before. I suspect just, age-related new problems. But that was a fairly long car to repair in terms of time spent. So I've got 6 parts to that episode. It's going to come out weekly. Yeah, it's just kind of an interesting project I was working on. Got some intake and exhaust work I've been doing on my red car. There's a project car that I haven't released a video on yet, which I'm working on. So, I'm just trying to stay on top of all the things I'm trying to get finished before winter sets in, and then make sense of it with the video. So that's really kind of what I've been up to. I know you've had a lot of fun recently.
Oh, I have had some fun. Yeah. Well, minor news. I've got my EcoBoost Ford back on the road, so that's a success. All right. So that's a good thing. And so far, if I can touch any pieces of wood, I have wood to touch, then it's okay, and it's very, very nice. So I'm very happy about that. The other thing that's been going on. Let me just reach off a shot. I promised people last month on the last episode, on the last version of this, that I would be releasing a new carburetor. And here it is. I'm not going to open this tonight, despite everybody going, oh, open the box, what's inside? Well, you just have to look at the part number to know that it's not your normal item from SU. This is a properly built SU carburetor by the factory, and it's built to my specification. So you'll be able to buy this, put it on your car, and it's got all the bits on. So for those people who are living in parts of the world that perhaps don't have SUs to exchange, you can now buy a brand new one. It's not quite available yet because I'm still doing the inspection on it. But watch out for the unboxing video because I'll do that, and then I'll go through showing people, the specifications and what makes it an ACDodd carb. But more of that next time.
Yeah, it's really exciting development.
Yeah, well, I'm just uber chuffed that I've got a carburetor with my name. It's even got my initial stamped on the tag. I mean, This is fantastic. Not only that, Mini Spares are going to stock it, so you'll be able to buy it from Berlin and Mini Spares. And Mini Spares have also agreed to put up a list of part numbers to make a kit for an inlet manifold. So you can buy an inlet manifold, so you can put the whole lot together. As I say, really, this is one of the things that I've been doing here is talking to Darren a lot, and Darren is a person in a different country, so I get that view from what it's like in a different country when you haven't got bits and what things will be available. So Darren was like, fitting kit. So
yeah,
what we're going to do is Mini Spares are going to make that available under one part number. So I'm really happy that they're getting on board, as well as stocking the carb and having the inlet manifold as well. So that's really good. Other things that have happened this week. Darren knows about this, but I've been playing with Dashpots. So one of the issues with Dashpots and tuning SU carburetors is, of course, the issue with fast drop dampers. Now, on the HS carburetors, they only have a plain bearing, and the oil, if you change the oil and thicken the oil up, it actually slows the drop of the piston, because there's a plain bearing in there. So in the case of what we need to do here, I've come up with a modification to make that a lot faster. So, and I'll be applying that to, obviously, carburetors that come in for the zero tolerance treatment. And the other thing to notice is, yes, you'll be able to buy that new HIF carburetor, but you'll also be able to buy a zero tolerance version of that one, only from myself. Yes, it will cost a little bit more money because it'll have my massaging tricks, but that will come out in due course. Okay, I can see we got a few interesting individuals in the chat, so if I can invite people to help us remove them, that'll be fantastic. Okay, so let's go back through some of the questions that we've got already. Okay. Harvey Price. Okay, my fueling I mentioned about the Mark II Golf on a Weber last time turned out to be a cheap ass inline fuel filter blocking and restricting fuel flow. My fueling Lambda is pretty perfect now. Well, nice and simple. You know, a block fuel delivery system will always cause a lean reading. Dion there says, congrats, she's talking about the carb. Troy Powell, when will we have a price on it? Okay, I do know that it is going to be under £800. Okay, because we've been talking about, I don't know the exact price, but it's going to be under £800. The zero tolerance one might not be under £800, but I haven't worked that out yet because I've got to see how long it takes me to work that out. Bill Beard, what's the best to run an engine in on, SU carb or a Weber carb on a 1380? Well, that's a very interesting question. Any carb that is properly calibrated for the application and that is actually able to control the fuel. Okay, so if you've got a Weber carb that you fit on that's not working properly or not calibrated properly, that will kill the engine. That equally applies for an SU as well. So if you put an SU carb on that engine that's not working properly or calibrated properly, you'll wreck the engine. Same thing. So really, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is the fueling is correct and the carbs are working. So hopefully that helps you. Okay, what else have we got down here? Is there a version with your face on it? Nobody wants to see that.
You get a CNC machine dashpot.
Yeah. Nobody wants to have my face engraved on an S. No. No. Right.
Yeah, I've been pretty excited that between your new carb and the fitting kit, that would save so much time. Like whenever I go out to do a tune, you run into all kinds of random stuff that's been attached to these carbs to hold the cables together, or the bolts are all stripped out, the manifold. Like having a complete kit from spares would be excellent fitting a new carb. Like you might as well just start out with all that stuff fresh and correct because it just makes life so much easier. I mean,
Yeah,
the times I've had to replace throttle cables or choke cables simply because they're frayed, um, I can't even count. It's just every single one, basically.
yeah. Okay,
Oh, you had
go
your
on.
recent video. You had a deep dive, I think, on the
Yes.
fueling. I thought that came over very well. I really appreciated that the effort that you went on that video to talk about what you were doing in more of a graphical form, so that people could understand where the fueling was and where you were going with it, and how little change the idle mixture screw had on the rest of the fueling curve itself.
Yeah. So what I was trying to do is respond to people asking for more information, and b clearly the state of knowledge about these things and how they work is very, very poor. So I can see that I'm going out and people are having their cars ruined effectively in some cases by people just turning the mixer screw and ball washing. So I thought it's time that we start doing the deep dive videos so people can see, you know, what the issues are and how it works. And I also wanted to demonstrate how good the SU could be. When you put a properly modified needle in there and you can correct the fueling and get it absolutely spot on. And I obviously did go to pains to say that clearly that is only part throttle. So there are other graphs that we could be drawing, but in terms of the information that I want to put out, that's one of the most important things is the part throttle fueling, because people get that totally wrong, ruin the drivability of the car, or wash the rings out.
Yeah. Well, and just like I said, the deep dive portion of it um, was really nice to see.
Yeah. Okay, so Mark C, your videos have been amazing to get my SU set up well. So thank you. Fitting a Lambda sensor to the exhaust permanently made it easier. Exactly. That's exactly why I say do it. And that's a great example. Thanks for writing that up, Mark, because other people can take heart from, I'm not just saying go out and spend money, put a gauge in because it's a nice thing to have. No, it's the only way to set your car up, perfectly. Yeah. And it's having that gauge gives you the window into actually understanding what's going on.
Yeah. And do remember that having the gauge fitted to your car means that every so often you got to take the sensor out and clean it. Um, if you read the instructions, it tells you I think every few months you're supposed to take it out, or once a year you need to take it out, clean it, and calibrate it. So do pay attention to that. I know on my red car, because it burns oil, my sensor does get dirty, from use. So I got to take it out and clean it and refit it every now and then, and do the calibration process. So do pay attention to that since you do have the system installed. I know that on my tuning kit, it's the same setup, but I clean that basically every tuning session,
Yeah.
and it gets recalibrated every single time, so it's
Yeah.
always in great shape.
That is a really good point. They do get blocked up because the engines burn oil. Modern engines are not necessarily that way inclined. The fueling is richer than it is on a modern car, so they do get contaminated. So yeah, cleaning will keep them reading well. And as Darren says, and I'm no different, when we use our Lambda sensors and we're putting them up the rear of an exhaust pipe, they don't get hot enough to burn off any of the crap, so they get blowtorched regularly, and mine does. Every end of every working day, blowtorch. In fact, if I'm in a field and I'm doing 10 or 12 cars in a day, I blowtorch it at lunchtime. Yeah, it's 5 or 6 cars, and you start to lose the edge on the sensor when you use it at the back because it's not running hot enough. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got some more questions coming in. Dion's there. What can we do to get our minis ready for winter hibernation? I shall go off and get a bottle. You can carry on talking, Darren.
Yeah. So I always make sure that my fuel tank's basically full, 95% full, and then AC is going to get you a bottle of Stable. to put in the fuel system. I think those two things are really critical in maintaining the fuel system. But yeah, there's the storage version, but you need to put something in the fuel to keep it from going. I typically like to store a car in the winter with fresh oil. I'll do an oil change if I know it's going to sit for more than 2-3 months. That's pretty much all I do. I don't put it up on blocks or anything like that. I just make sure the fuel is stable.
So what I've been advising my customers to do is obviously use a product like that. Now that storage is that will give you 2 years worth of protection, so that's more than enough. On a Mini with a 7.5 gallon tank, that is half a bottle to a full tank of fuel. And what you do is you run the tank down, you take it to the fuel station, put half a bottle in, then bring the tank, and then drive around for 15 or 20 minutes to get the fuel up, all up the fuel lines, in the fuel pump, in the carburetor, and then drive it home, put it in the shed, turn it off, disconnect the battery, put the battery on a trickle charge for the winter, and leave it. There is absolutely no need to go out and start that car every month to keep it running. Don't bother. And the reason for that is because if you start that car up, you'll have the choke out. And every time you pull the choke out, you're wearing your piston rings and bores and all the rest of it. And you're also coating your spark plugs. So literally leave it for 5 months or however long you want to leave it. When you want to come out to start it again, as Darren says, if you want to do some, pre-winter stuff like changing oil, that's all good. There's no problem with that. When you come to start it again after the winter, put your battery back on, pull the choke out, and start it just like you put it away the day before, and she'll start right up. In fact, you'll be amazing. You'll be amazed how good this stuff is. I cannot recommend this enough. This is fantastic. And you don't have to buy this from me. You can buy it anywhere. But the point is, I carry this in my kit to sell to people because this makes my service better. So if you come round, or if you ask me to come round and I tune your car, that's an improvement, obviously. But if you start using this, that's a double improvement. So your experience with your classic will be far better when you're using this. Now, if you're someone who perhaps stores the car quite often through the year for 2 or 3 months, then actually you might want to use a slightly different product called Stabil 360, which is something you put in the fuel tank all year round. This is really only for laying it up in the winter. It doesn't matter if you do that; it's no problem. But the point is, this will give you maximum protection.
Yeah, and if you watch the videos that Stabil puts out, their chemists talk about the differences between the 360 and the storage. But more importantly, the storage is mostly just a concentrated version of the 360.
Yeah.
They also have a marine version, so if you have a boat or something, use that as well. But there's plenty of videos out there of ethanol damage to aluminum parts, and there's a lot of aluminum parts in the fuel system on our cars. Plus, the tank, prevent the rust corrosion at the bottom of the tank as well. So, really critical to do that step. And I'll even do it on the fuel injected cars as well. It's not just the carbureted cars. The fuel injected cars have the same issue.
Yeah,
you've got to treat those as well.
Okay, so Dion, hopefully that helps you. I'll do one more question, and then I think we'll have to bring Ross on. So back to the noughties. What's the best kind of lube to put on the crankshaft end seal if the engine is going to be sat for a little while before first start? Well, there's no harm in using engine building lube, but if the engine is a fresh engine you built, just build it with a proper engine building lube rather than oil, and then you can store it for as long as you like. Okay, but if you're just you're just worried about any particular seals, just leave them with the engine with the oil in there. The most important thing though is what Darren said. If you're really worried about it, just change the oil right before you store the car, and then you don't have any acids and everything that's in the oil doing any damage over a longer period of time.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of the cars that come in for tuning work or repair work, I'll do the oil change first before I even do the tuning. That way, there's no, oil issues, contaminants in the oil messing with my mixture setup.
Okay, so one more question there. Paul Gomes, excellent video on fueling AC. Okay, well, thank you very much, Paul. The idea was to obviously educate people, you know, and a lot of people have liked that. And the video has gone very well, so I'm very happy with that. Okay, so Darren Robert Shaw. So guys, finally purchased the Innova 5567 mile. Yeah, good purchase. My standard 1275 is 1500. 1500 is 6, 2000 is 12, 3000 is 20, and 4000 24. Does this need advancing or recurving? If it's a standard 1275, I crank 6 degrees on that straight away. Yeah, I'll crank 6 degrees on that straight away. Are you at sea level, Darren? If you're at sea level, crank 6 degrees on it.
The numbers look okay.
The numbers look okay. It does look a little bit short at 2000, but it's only slightly off. Okay, so you need 6 degrees of timing straight away. I would say with that one, and that will definitely get you a lot better performance. Okay, Darren, if you don't mind, because of my incompetence with setting up YouTube, if you can duck out for a minute, and then we'll get Ross on.
So, do you want to set a time for me to jump back in?
Let's go for half an hour and see how it is.
Okay, I'll be in chat watching anyway. So,
okay.
All right, I'll see you in a minute.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll see. I don't know if you can come in, Ross. We'll try that. If you've got the link, try it now. Okay, so wonderful. Ross is coming in. Stand by, everybody. Ross is coming in. Here he comes. Technology. Oh, we got there somehow. Trying to do a three-way on YouTube. I'm never going to live this down.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so if people don't know, this is Ross Thomas. He's the governor of Thomas Classic and Modern, and he joined the chat last time, and I asked him if he wanted to come on and actually be part of the live stream and Q&A. So we've basically got him on. So he's here for. Well, he's actually here for quite a while, but we might have to switch back to Darren. So I'm never going to live this down, am I, Ross? Anyway,
it's all right. It's fine. We'll let you off.
Yeah. It's all right. It's fine. But you've written it down in your book. Yeah, I
know. all I got to say is you've probably done a better job of it than me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you're just being too kind. Anyway, okay. So So for those who don't know Ross, runs Thomas Classic and Modern. Ross builds cars from scratch. He services cars. He builds fast road engines. He builds competition engines. He builds standard engines. I'm very lucky because Ross likes to use my parts in his engine builds as well. So thank you very much, Ross.
Welcome. Thank you for supplying them.
That's all right. So the reason why he's here is so that people can get a chance to talk to another expert who's got a different view on things. As I said earlier, myself and Darren kind of focus on the engines and stuff, whereas Ross focuses on the engines, but the whole car as well. So he has a lot more things to think about, and he has a lot more customers than we do as well. So he's a very busy man. So the very fact he's here is fantastic. So please go out of your way to ask questions and take this opportunity. I think I better shut up and go down the question list, and we'll see where we get to. All right. Anyway, okay. So next question there, Dave Huddleston. I love the mug. Thank you very much. Please, can you recommend a Lambda gauge? The only one I can see on eBay are AFR gauges. So I would prefer a Lambda. Okay. All right. So, much as eBay's very good. Don't buy a Lambda gauge from eBay because you don't always know what sensor you're going to get. So go get one from Fuel Performance or help me out here, Ross Burton or somebody like that who sells these gauges. because
the Innovate one that I've just bought, the forget what the number is now, but it's the gauge version basically. So
okay,
it's a stripped down version of the full on LM2
okay.
sensor.
But it's got the Bosch LSU 4.9 with it, which is the
Yeah,
important thing, because
yeah,
Bosch sensors do go wrong, and you can buy them anywhere, and you can therefore fit them with a gauge, and you know it's going to read properly. That's the important thing. So anyone who does this tuning has got 2 or 3 sensors in their toolkit just in case,
yeah.
me included.
What I
So
like about the gauge is the fact that it will display both. It will display Lambda and AFR
yes,
in a
and
slightly
that's
different way. You've got a ring
yeah.
around the outside, and then you can have your AFR showing in the center.
Yes, so I mean that's perfect. Yes, so the other one that I have been using on other people's cars is the AEM wideband, the one with 3 digits. It's switchable, between AFR and Lambda. Most of these gauges are switchable, but some of them require you have to hook it up to a computer to be able to switch it over. Okay, I don't know what I think the Innovate ones I've seen are like that. I don't know what your one's like. If it's a switch, if it's a cut down version, it might be a switch.
Yeah, it's switchable, but it's switchable on the unit, so you don't have to plug it into a laptop or anything.
Perfect. So this is the important thing. You don't need anything flash. Yeah.
No.
Some people like to log stuff. I just like to have the thing on the dashboard and watch it while I'm driving. I watch it in real time. But that's not for everybody. So hopefully, David, that will help you understand. But go for a Bosch LSU 4.9 and get it. Follow the instructions in the kit as to how to mount it. Okay, because you don't just shove it in. You've got to get it in at the right angle and stuff so it doesn't get moisture. All right, and that can be a problem on a Mini with the how close that is to the body. Okay, Bill Beard, what's the easiest carb to work on for running in an engine? Well, you do a lot of running in an engines, Ross. So what do you think?
Got to be an SU all day long. Depending obviously on what it is, but if it's anything large bore base, 1275 and upwards, single HIF 44. Run through the basic settings. I know AC's got a great video on your sort of baseline settings for how to set up the linkages and so on and so forth, and stick with that. But the key is, as AC will always tell you, do not go playing with your mixture screw. Get it nice and lean as you can. You need to monitor it. Kind of boils back to what we were just saying about wideband gauges and everything. But for simplicity of setting up for running in an engine, I don't think you'll beat an SU.
What what he said. Simple.
What he told me.
Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, so hopefully that helps you there, Bill. Okay, Mark C. I will say it's definitely important to get a quality sensor. Mine is an AEM wideband. Narrowband won't provide a useful info. Yeah, absolutely. Wideband is the key, so you get the nice wide read of exactly what's going on, and also no air leaks in your exhaust, because air leaks will unfortunately make the gauge read all over the place. So you need to make that exhaust very sealed. No leaking at the exhaust clamps and all this sort of business, because it will contaminate your readings.
Yeah.
Ian Moore, why have you black marked over the writing on your exhaust gas analyzer? They're going to hate this. I think Ross knows this one, and that and that's because the casing on my exhaust gas analyzer is a battery charger casing.
Yeah.
It's not a wideband. It's because I installed the gauge inside the case, so the case is there to make the thing robust. Okay, so that it can be withstand carrying about. There's actually a great big lump of steel in that box to put some weight on it. So when it goes down, it doesn't vibrate off or move and all this sort of business. It's all done deliberately. But the casing is a steel battery charger case, and I thoroughly recommend, if you're going to make a gauge, put it in a nice heavy case, because when you use the damn thing, it won't get knocked off on the side. And, you know, that has been one of the best inventions I've ever done. But yeah, I just blacked out all the wording on it so people go, what's that? I've just made it up, basically. It's all made up. So sorry to shatter everybody's illusions.
The other thing you could use there, if you can find one at car boot sale, they do crop up now and again, is the old green Gunson's gas tester casing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing is with it is obviously it's plastic, it's not metal. But if you're not carting it about left, right, and centre, something like that is, you know, ideal for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would advise, because it's light, to put a piece of steel in the bottom, make it a bit heavier so it stays put. Vibrations and things are, you know, terrible. So having things that can wait and don't move is a great boon. Classic Mini Garage. Hi chaps. Hi, thanks for joining the chat. We got 48 people. One thing is, can we all have a thumbs up? So if you can hit that thumbs up, that'll be fantastic. Can't have 48 people and only 14 thumbs up. Come on, we need some likes. Okay, so moving on. Back to the noughties. What's the best lube to put on a? Oh, that was. I think we already read that, didn't we? Okay, yeah. Well, just in case you didn't get the message earlier, the best lube to put on a crankshaft seal that is newly fitted and the engine won't be started for a few months. Use some engine building lube when you put that in, because that's nice and thick and it will stay around there and it won't run away. All right, so that's all you need to do with that. Okay, Matthew Richard Witts, what are your thoughts on twin carbs? Do they make a difference? Ross.
The age-old question. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Throttle response is massively increased down low. Don't subscribe to this finicky sort of wording that is, oh, twin carbs always go out of tune. No, they don't. If they're set right and they're maintained right from the very beginning, and
they're not worn out,
and the spindle bushes are good and the seals are good and this, that, and the other, they are perfect. They're superb. I've run no end of twins.
Yeah, so this is very interesting and very pertinent, because I've built a lot of twin carbs for Ross. So Ross has used a lot of mine exclusively, and he's also obviously worked with others as well. But you know, the point is, Ross wouldn't be able to sell these things to customers because they'd moan at him if they weren't any good. All right.
No.
So twin carbs are very good, but only if they're in very good condition, they're built properly, and not only that, they're tuned properly. And that is one of the most difficult things for people nowadays to achieve.
Yeah, very much so. If we are building a car from scratch, an engine from scratch, that is going to be run on twin carbs, if we install the engine, we put the twins on it straight away, because we know that we're okay setting them up and we can monitor everything, we can balance them correctly and everything else. If it's going to leave us as a crate engine, so to speak, we run it in on our test bed on a single HAF 44 usually. Then the caveat is, if the customer installs that engine, the twin carbs should effectively be, at the very least, rebuilt or new and set up correctly straight away. That's the key with twins. It's the setting up that throws people off all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen some abortions where people, even with new ones, and they just, you know, they wind one jet down and one jet's up, and they, you know, well, yeah. You've seen this from a customer of mine. Cost him £9,000, didn't it? Because he took it to a person who thought he knew what he was doing, and he destroyed an engine that was £9,000. Unbelievable. What people will do to get business and say, oh yeah, I can tune that, and then ruin an engine.
And interestingly enough, said customer that was involved in that straight away was fearful of the twin carbs. So when we rebuilt that unit and put it back together, he almost insisted it ran on a single HAF 44. Through no fault of the carburetors themselves, but
No.
just through somebody not setting them up right.
Yeah, they were a pair of my carbs. They were perfecto. But
They
because
were.
somebody turned the screws and didn't have a bloody clue what they was doing, they ruined the guy's engine. So yeah. Unbelievable, really. Okay, so Matthew, hopefully that helps you understand. Obviously, we've got lots of experience with twin carbs and things like that, and when things go wrong. So we just wanted to make sure you got the full picture. Clint Ford, note that you also remember that modern fuel expands in warmer days, so don't fill to the brim, as fuel will start coming out over your paint, obviously when it warms up. Okay. I can't argue with that, Clint, so well done. But I did say that you go for a little drive after you fill it up. So, I mean, if you are filling it up to the, if you are filling it up to the neck, I did say brim it, so fair enough. But what I mean is, fill the thing up. You don't have to overfill it. If you're filling it up to the bottom of the neck, that's kind of overfilling it, because as soon as you go around a corner, or you've got fuel up against the cap, which is not ideal. So anyway, thanks for letting people know that yes, modern fuel does expand because of the alcohol content.
Interestingly, that always appears to be worse on the commercials, the vans, the estates, the pickups.
Okay, so Darren Robert Short, no, he's obviously answered the question. I can't remember what it was. Clint Ford, my paint ruined from filling to the brim. Yeah, okay. Darren Robert Shaw, so 12 degrees at 1500 RPM. I'll just go back to that original statement where your timing settings were. Yes. 12 degrees at 1500. Absolutely. Paul, what's the difference between ported and manifold? I think you ported a manifold vacuum. Okay. Well, that one's simple and straightforward. I'm going to go and get my... I need to go in a bag and pick out some examples. Here I have some carbs that I'm in the process of doing, okay? So this is an HIF38, okay? And you can see the vacuum port, okay? Now, if you look inside where the vacuum port comes through, I might need a bit of a light. I don't think I've got one that's going to be sensible, but the hole comes through. Now, manifold vacuum means that hole is in front of the butterfly. So what that basically means is manifold vacuum is connected to that pipe when the butterfly is closed, okay? So that means you get vacuum on there when the engine's idling, okay? Which in reality, you don't want if you want good emissions, all right? Because you've got too much ignition advance. Typically, you'll have 25, maybe 30 degrees, maybe even a little bit more at idle. Trust me, the engine doesn't like that and it won't run clean, all right? So what you do is you modify that, okay? And you make that so what we call ported vacuum. I've had a delivery earlier, Ross, from Paul. He's been cleaning.
Oh, there we are then.
Okay, so this one, as you can see, there's no butterfly in it, but the vacuum there is a much smaller hole and it comes out behind the butterfly. So that means when the butterfly is closed, okay, manifold vacuum is pulling against the butterfly, but manifold vacuum is prevented from going to that pipe when the butterfly is in the idle position. Now that's positioned such that as soon as you move that throttle, the throttle disc, a small amount, it uncovers that and lets the signal from the manifold draw vacuum. Okay, so that's basically what it is. So you get vacuum when you're driving on part throttle, but you don't get vacuum when you're idling. That's what ported vacuum is. So every ACDodd carburetor has been modified for ported vacuum. And surprise, surprise, the nice new sexy one that's be available also has the same modification. But more on that another time. Okay, so Grease Monkey, please explain if your needle calibration works accurately across all speed and load situations when you appear only to tune with no load. So this is someone who knows what they're talking about. Okay, so you have to be very careful about what I'm putting up and how you're reading that information. Okay, I didn't say that fueling that you saw on that video was perfect for all loads and speeds. That was a part throttle curve. Okay, and that part throttle curve is right for one specific reason, and that is because when you modify the needle on an SU, it's the rate of change between stations that makes the difference. So if you have the same rate of change all the way down the needle, then the needle will track at slightly wider throttle openings. So you don't need to worry about it, okay, at part throttle. When you go progression and wide open throttle, that works differently, okay? So one of the things that won't be coming out is how I do it all. Because the only people that get that information are the ones that pay for it, okay? So the information that I'll put up for part throttle is important because it's one of the things that makes the biggest difference to how those engines run, and obviously how long they last as well, because if they're running rich, it ruins an engine. Ross knows by first-hand experience how well these engines run when you get that part throttle fueling right. It can literally make or break the way a car drives, doesn't it, Ross?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I appreciate the question, Grease Monkey, but I will tell you at this point, it does work, and you don't need to load that for part throttle only. All right. I can't do the fueling at full power on a static tune. I only guess it. Okay. People ask me this, and it's like, it's a guess. But when you've done thousands of them, you get a pretty good idea. And as I say, I don't let all the information out.
Yeah.
All right. So at the end of the day, if you want to get the fueling right everywhere, under all conditions, including progression, part throttle progression, accelerator pump, and full power sustained running, that's what dynos are for. So, next question. Paul, what's the difference between okay, I'm reading the wrong questions here, aren't I? Yeah, okay. Gamer Paul, what wheel size do you guys prefer for a Mini? Oh, I'll let you do that one, Ross. Wheels. I don't do wheels.
I tell you what, I'll go one better than answering that question.
Oh.
I'll show you.
Ah, there we go.
Them ones. 10s all day long.
Yeah.
10-inch wheels, 100%. In my opinion, the best in terms of aesthetics and handling. For everyday use, 12s are pretty good. 12-inch on 165 60 12 tires, pretty good for everyday use. But 10-inch, definitely.
Yeah. I can only vouch for experience when I was driving minis. 10-inch wheels every time.
Yeah.
My personal favourite was 10-inch wheels with 165 70 tyres on.
Yeah, that's it.
10s, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot to be said for that as well. I mean, fashions go around and come around and this, that, and the other. And I mean, even up till fairly recently, the sort of archless look with a nice little set of sort of 4.75 rose petals on 165 70 tires. Lovely.
Okay, thanks for that. So Ian Moore, I was wondering why you want to reverse the polarity on a gas analyzer. It might be because you might be wanting to fit it in positive earth vehicle. That's what I would say. Yeah, back to the noughties. I mounted my Lambda in a project box from eBay. Perfect. Whatever works for you.
That's exactly what we did on the test bed. We've got a project. We've got two actually. We've got two project boxes on top of one another. One of which has got the Lambda gauge in it, and a Augs capillary temperature gauge for the test bed, and the others has got ignition switch, fuel pump switch, etc. Project box ideal for that, and they're cheap. They're pennies.
Absolutely. Got a direct question for you, Ross, here from Ian Moore. Question for Ross: what's your thoughts on acid dipping an empty shell and having it e-coated? Looking at using the company in Birmingham. Interested in your thoughts.
Okay, I can only give you my thoughts on personal experience. About 20 years ago, I had a shell dipped and went to town on it, did an awful lot of work on it, restored it. I then sent it back to a company and had it re-dipped after all of the work was completed, and they then coated it following that process. When it came back from dipping, I thought it was superb. It frightened me to death because there wasn't much left of it. But what it did do was give me a completely blank canvas. However, the problem that I had with it, now whether it's a bad experience or whether it's still the case, I don't know. Getting that acid out of every box section in a Mini is very, very difficult. And what actually happened is the acid started bleeding through the seams, and it started messing with the paintwork.
Did they not try and neutralize it as part of the process?
It is neutralized, and of course, probably best part of 2 years went by in between the processes. So I don't think it's possible to get absolutely everything back out once it's been in there. Now, process might have changed over those years. Personally, I have never had anything dipped ever since. I might have just had a bad experience, but my preferred method for anything like that has to be blasting. And let's be fair, 9 times out of 10, if you're restoring a Mini, you can already see where the bad bits are. So you haven't got to have the whole thing blasted.
Yeah, interesting question there. Blasting. Do you notice that does the body shell get warped at all when it's been blasted? Have you seen that?
Only if you let some gorilla do it with shot blasting, which again,
They
you
use
have to know.
do it. Yeah,
yeah, you have to know what you're doing and who you trust to do it.
Okay.
I recently had the bottom sort of 9 inches or so soda blasted on a shell that we were going to restore, just to reveal what the issues were. And in all honesty, that had no issues with warping or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that answers your question there. Moving on to the next one. Mark C. Opinions on fitting auxiliary water pumps into the cooling loop. Now, I'll start off with I've had some experience with electric water pumps, but we've only used them on race cars. I always look at their water pumps and they look a little bit cheap and nasty, and I don't feel confident that they're going to keep working after 20,000 miles. So I think my view would be, if you've got a race car that you put on a trailer, tow it somewhere, use it. The water pump's good because you can change the speed and the flow, and you can leave it flowing after the engine's off and all this sort of good stuff. So they're a good idea. But on a road car, yeah, I like a nice mechanical one. I think that's my personal feeling. I don't know what Ross's experience is.
Yeah, exactly the same, really. I mean, a good friend of mine had quite a spicy, pretty much a full race car that he used to use for track days and whatnot. He fitted a electric water pump system to his because he liked the fact that he could leave it running when he came in to prevent hot spotting in the engine.
Yeah.
As to whether it actually had any benefit or not, I don't know. All I can say is the same as AC, really. Stick with a good quality water pump. The only thing I would say about water pumps is slightly off kilter. Stay away from those horrible press tin impeller things. They're awful.
Do they still make them?
They are still out there.
Oh, terrible
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
They
I've
are
actually
still
seen
out
them
there.
come off of engines and they've disintegrated.
Yeah.
It's just a stub.
Yeah.
Terrible.
That's it. They're still there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're up to 9 o'clock now. So if it's all right with you, Ross, can we give you a half hour's rest? Are you going to be available at 9:30?
I can be if you want me to be, by all means.
I think we should do that. We should maximise your time if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
So if I can ask you to leave the chat, and we'll get Darren to come back in, and we'll carry on for half an hour, and then you can go and do whatever you need to do for the next half an hour, or stay watching.
No worries at all. I will do.
All right. Anyway, thanks for the first half. We'll see you in about half an hour.
No worries.
Okay, let's get down the list. So, evening, boys. Do you have any idea when you'll be doing a tuning day in the northwest? No, I have no bookings for the north at all. If you want me to come up the north, it's very expensive just for one car, because you've got to pay me hourly rate to go all the way up there, potentially overnight stay, very expensive. So what the people in the north of the country need to do, okay, is they need to get together and organise a tuning weekend, and therefore I can then split the cost of that amongst all the cars. Typically, you want 14 cars. That will give you the cheapest price over 2 days, or typically more like 7 days. 7 cars over 1 day. But obviously that will be expensive because it's still an overnight stay. So the more cars, the cheaper it is. All right, but you also have to remember, the more cars there are, the less time I have to work on each one. So that's why the price is down. So, at the end of the day, you don't get something for nothing. So the more money you spend, the more time you get of my time working on your car, if that makes sense. So for those that are listening, if you can, understand that, if you want to contact me offline, contact me via Facebook Messenger, and then we can discuss that and get a booking done for next year. I have no bookings at the moment for any group tunes at all next year, let alone anything up north. Okay, so people up north, if you want me up there, you're going to have to get organised and get a group of you together to share the costs. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand that, Mark. If quite happy to discuss any of your requirements, should you need to do so. All right, Andrew Khan, thanks for your YouTube vids, AC. Because of your vids, I'm having my mini tune. No problem. No problem at all. I'm just trying to educate people, really, and try and make them understand that things that have been aren't necessarily what they should have been in terms of information. Okay, so it takes a while, because some people tell me I'm talking out my backside, because they don't know any different. Unfortunately, the people I train, like Darren, who's now back in the chat, no different, because they actually see cars and they use the information that I pass on when I train, and they can see the benefits. Okay, Bill Beard, sticky liquid running down the inlet manifold. Yeah, don't know. All I can suggest there is you might have oil contamination, and you've got some sort of coming in from the crankcase or coming down there, but I don't know what that would be. There's a question for Ross. Okay, perhaps we'll come back to that later, or hold that for later when Ross comes back on at 9:30. Perhaps Ross, if you're listening, which engine lube do you prefer? So there's something you can come back on later, Ross.
Yeah, we'll put it in chat.
Yeah, or just answer it straight in the chat now if you want to do that. Thanks for that, Darren. Yeah, Mark C. The worst part of 10-inch wheels is finding a tyre machine that can fit them. That's right. It's difficult now because there's no other cars that use those size tyres. So garages don't generally have the machines that will go that small anymore.
Yeah, I hand mount all mine. I mean, sometimes I'll take them to a tire place to get them to be dismounted, just because it's annoying to break the beads, and then take them home, clean them up, and then hand mount the tires at home, and then get them balanced afterwards. Because there's nothing worse than going through a lot of trouble to get a special set of 10-inch tires and then having the shop ruin it because the machine stretches the bead too far trying to get them on.
Okay, Darren Robert Shaw. Is it normal to have a fluctuation of your timing marks when checking your timing? So obviously, so you got your new timing light and you got things that move around. Right, there's a couple of things that can cause that. One of which is interference and spikes, noisy ignition systems. So bad HT leads. If you've got a dynamo with a control box, that can upset the strobe light. So it's a strobe light making the thing move. On the other hand, it could be that you've got a lot of slack in the system, slack timing chain, or worn distributor causing it to move around, or distributor problems, bent shaft, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying there is there could be a whole number of reasons why that's happening. And because I can't see what yours is doing, I can't really advise as to what it is. But because I've been looking at timing lights and flashing timing marks for so long, I can generally tell what it is straight away by looking at the pattern of flashes I'm getting and know whether it's either the timing light or the actual engine. And probably Darren started to develop that sense as well, I would imagine by now, because you tend to know, you get a feel for what the timing light's actually telling you, and when you see anomalies, it's like that's not the engine. You can tell that there's something else going on.
Yeah. Yes, the electrical ones are interesting because they're usually so far out of spec to where the timing mark is that it looks like you've had a misfire of the strobe. Like it's just 30 degrees, 40 degrees, some bizarre number.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, I must admit, you get it'll be a little bit, and then you'll see a flick somewhere around the wheel. You think, blimey, what's that doing? But that's
Yeah.
usually classic interference.
Yeah, and I've often switched to number 4 just to move away from the alternator if I think it's an alternator noise issue.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You don't have to be on number 1 cylinder. You can check the timing on every cylinder if you want to, and sometimes that is needed. But moving it to number 4, if that crank's been ground right, then that'll be in the same place. It's just that there's always a good place to start, and that's number 1 cylinder. So there's no harm in moving it to number 4 if you want to see if that gives you a better reading. And as Darren's already said, I think it works for him. So I think I've done it on occasion as well. Moved it to number 4 just to get a better reading.
Yeah, and I also have a spare set of leads for my timing light, just in case I have a problem with one of the leads themselves or the clamp might be going bad. So I can always switch out real quick when I'm in the field. But yeah, it's usually a strange, misfiring of the tool. That's when it's electrical related.
Okay. Just to let everyone know, we've got 59 people in the chat. That's fantastic. I've only got 35 likes though. So let's give me a thumbs up. Let's get those likes up. Thank you very much. Okay, so Stefan Mini Cooper. Currently, I'm restoring my Mini. I'm going to use epoxy primer on top of that. I want to put filler. Should I apply on top? Right, okay. That's another one for Ross to answer. I couldn't tell you anything about bodywork. If I want to know about bodywork, I'll pick the phone up and I'll get hold of Ross. But yeah, apologies, Stefan, but we'll bring Ross back on at 9:30. Okay, if Ross is out there, hopefully he's taking a note of these and he can quickly run through these when he gets back on.
It's actually a question I wouldn't mind knowing the answer to as well.
Yeah. FBA, would you recommend using the LZX285 damper on an HIF 38 as well? Yes. In fact, I would only use an LZX2085 damper because you know it's going to give you the right response straight out the packet. It still needs to be tuned with the right oil, but the point is it will be a fast drop. So that's always a good start. And I've quite often now, when I'm coming out and I'm tuning cars and I go to HS carburetors, HS4s typically, I'm finding that sometimes I can't get the piston to rise slow enough to give me the right enrichment. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a hybrid. So I'm taking out the piston, the damper out of the carb, and I'm swapping it for a 2085 and then changing the caps over. So I'll put the 2085 in the HS4, and that usually gives me a stiff enough lift with 2050 oil to give me the enrichment that I need. One of those little tricks that you have to do on the road. By the way, all these sort of things that I find, I do send them back to SU carburetors, so they do know about these sort of things that I'm doing. Okay, so Paul, I'm fitting a vacuum dizzy to my car. So, which is the best vacuum, ported or best vacuum? Which is best, vacuum or ported? Let's read it right. For my 1938, is that 1938 or 1983? The old dizzy didn't have a vacuum takeoff. P.S. The first question was half lost. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. Okay, so is that a 1938 car or a 1983 car? If it's a 1938 car, it will absolutely run better with a vacuum. If it's a 1983 car that doesn't have a vacuum, it will absolutely run much better with a vacuum if it's a road car. Okay, so it's fairly straightforward. But in terms of what's best for a road car, if it's for emissions, I always go for ported vacuum. It's just easier. The engine idle's better. It's just better. As simple as that.
Well, and if it was a 38 car, I mean, the reason they added the vacuum advance is to give you better part throttle economy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you can add it to it, it'll run better.
Yeah. Throttle response is better and everything. Yeah. In fact, I have a friend, I think, who's got a 1935 Rover that we put electronic ignition on, and he put a vacuum and recurved the dizzy, and the thing pulled wheelies in comparison to what it did before. He couldn't believe how much better it was. You know, he came to me talking about, we need to port the head and do all sorts of things. I was like, well, let's start with the basics. And it was so far out of tune in terms of there was no ignition advance. It was terrible. So I recurved the distributor, put it in, and he was absolutely dumbfounded with how much performance we got out of this old 1935 Rover. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, old cars respond by making them more modern. Mark Boys, maybe AC, we could just walk through the Mini on. Yeah, okay. We could just throw the Mini on the trailer and bring it to you. Yeah, okay, fair enough. The only problem with that is I don't have any premises. All right, so that's why I do mobile. So I only go to people. You can't come to me unless I'm at a venue. So what I mean by that is that's companies. So a company might have me at a venue, and then you can go there, or you organise your own tuning day, and I come to you, and then other people can come to wherever you are. So unfortunately, you can't just put it on a trailer and bring it to me. Okay, Ryan Hughes. Oh, one for you, Darren. Will I see much of a benefit between points and electronic ignition? I know you'll love this one, Darren.
Yeah, electronic all the way.
Yeah.
You can run much higher ignition power with an electronic system. The points is fine for an original car. You want to run points, you want to run a 3-ohm coil, fine. But you're limiting the potential to run leaner mixtures because you have such a limited ignition power available to you with a 3-ohm system. Now you can run points with the ballast system, so you have a 1.5-ohm coil. That would be an improvement over a standard 3-ohm point system. But at the end of the day, I'd rather have electronic ignition anyway, especially with like a 65D, because the 65D uses a magnetic sensor for its triggering, and it's just the variable dwell system of the module. It's just a better system. And
you got a bearing at each end of the shaft, so there's no wobble. It just goes round and it's perfectly smooth. So in reality, there is no reason nowadays not to be using electronic.
Yeah, and they make them to fit in old distributors, so sometimes you don't even know it's there. You can fit them in the 25D and the 45D, and it looks the same. But the key is the power for us.
Yeah, absolutely. The power of the ignition is key if you want to light off a lean mix and have a nice efficient part throttle running. Okay, Gareth Davis. Hi AC. You're an SU aficionado, but any interest in injection? I'm currently testing a very affordable alternative to the 45mm throttle bodies offered by some big names. I've got no problem with injection. The problem is how long you need to be on a rolling road for, so you can get cold running performance as I would like it. I've never been on an aftermarket car injection system on a car that runs properly. All right. Now that might be slightly different with some of the American systems when they on them big V8s that you buy a body and it self tunes and all this all using all the very latest technology. That might be different. Again, I've not experienced that, but the ones I've seen in the UK are usually very poorly set up because people spend a couple of hours on setting the thing up and they think it's done. If you talk to people who do mapping for manufacturers, it's weeks to get all those figures in for all the temperature settings and all the rest of it. So yes, injection is absolutely the way to go, but most people can't afford the £100 an hour for many hours it takes to get these maps built properly. All right, so that's the big drawback. Now if somebody comes up with a system that will self map, there's a possibility. So a lot of the American stuff I see on the V8 certainly claims to do that. I couldn't tell you whether it does that or not. And I know that there are people that love it and there are people that hate the damn thing. So at the end of the day, injection is the way to go. But it still has issues with people, not putting the right amount of time in to make them work properly at all, in all conditions. So, and also, when it comes to altitude, the system needs to compensate for altitude. Now, the SU has a very interesting effect. It can partially compensate for altitude, as we've been finding. Darren will back me up there because he lives at 5,200 feet altitude, and surprisingly, the carburetors are quite forgiving as long as they're set up properly. Yeah, sure. If he sets one up at 5,200 feet, it will run rich when you get it down. Sorry, it will run. Beg your pardon. It will run lean when you get it back down to sea level, but it won't run as lean as you might think.
Yeah, and a lot of times, there's mountains that I got to drive up and down. So sometimes I'm driving for 5,000 feet over a 10,000 foot mountain pass, and then back down to 5,000 feet again. So I could travel another mile in elevation in a day. So the SU does compensate for it. If you're running like a fixed jet system, you might see a 15%, 20% change in fueling. But if you're running lean at 5,000 feet, it's not so bad at high elevation because the airflow just isn't there.
Yeah.
Versus if you going down to sea level, you get more
and
airflow.
That's the key. The SU knows the airflow isn't there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the piston's in a different position, and that's the beauty of that system, and that's why it does compensate. It doesn't compensate completely. So I'm not saying that you set it up and it's perfect all out. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's more forgiving. Okay, so there is more leeway on an SU for doing that than there would be on other carburetors.
Yeah, and that's why you want to have a manifold pressure sensor and maybe an atmospheric sensor if you're going to run injection, so you can tell the computer, hey, we're changing altitude, make adjustments accordingly. Yeah, I have no problems with injection cars, but one of the things that I find the most frustrating thing I find on injection cars is that the computers don't necessarily understand when there's a problem, especially when the problem is a physical problem in like what's going on with the engine or the sensors themselves. It's a very, very crude system. So a lot of times the cars will come into me for repair and the computer will say nothing's wrong. And yet the plugs are fouled out and it just runs terribly. And it turns out that it's something to do with something that it doesn't understand. Like it doesn't understand it's lost its manifold pressure sensor line, or you know, it doesn't have it's not getting the right coolant temperature information, even though the engine's warmed up properly. Like it's not a smart computer system. It won't know what's wrong.
Classic example is the SPI Mini.
Yeah.
Loses its vacuum line, it panics and goes full rich, and then washes the rings out. Absolutely ruins the engine. I mean, you know, how is that you know, a fail-safe system? And that's the point, isn't that? And the manufacturer made that. So as I said, nothing wrong with injection. Problem with all the things that need to be done to an injection to make it work as I would like it to work. Okay, so moving on. Darren Robert Shaw, the timing movement is quite constant. So, okay, so he's talking about his flickering around. 70% of the time it's there, and very steady pattern of movement when it steps out. Maybe you've got a bent dizzy, or there's some problem with the mechanical drive mechanism in your dizzy or something like that. I don't know. I'd have to look at your pattern to understand it, and be able to tell you a bit more about it. Bill Beard, what's your thought on using Megajolt ignition setup? I've mapped quite a few of those, and when they're installed properly, they're fantastic. So I've got no problem with that at all. Uses a modern high power coil pack. Getting a bit old. I mean, I haven't fit one or tuned one for years, so I don't even know if Autosport Labs are selling them. I think they are. But my point is, they are a good system. Got no problem with them at all. Paul comes back with 1938. Okay, so as I said when I was talking about the 1935 Rover, vacuum all the way. Yeah, we'll just improve that engine and make it a lot better, more throttle response, and you know, more efficient. Okay, so Amid's lad, my advanced curves seems to be about right. 10 degrees at idle with 30 degrees all in at 4,000 total advance. I'm getting 55 at 3,000. Okay, so yeah, so he's getting 55 with a vacuum. Yeah, maybe a little bit too much on the vacuum. So you might want to think about putting a stop in there or changing the vacuum unit. But you know, 45, 47, maybe 50 at most. 55, I think, is a bit too much. Maybe if you was running an economy engine and it was running very lean, like I'm talking 1.05, things like that, and you was firing that off, maybe 55 might be beneficial. But I'm not. Normally, it's more like 45, 47, something like that. So I'd say your curve is fine, but you didn't give us a figure at 2,000 revs. That's important. So if you can get us a figure at 2,000 revs, and then we tell you if the curve's the right shape or not. Ross Thomas, thanks, Ross. There, engine build lube answer. Yeah, I use Miller's competition build lube and Torco MPZ. Yeah, absolutely, no problem with any of those. And Ross is absolutely right. That's what he uses. So yeah, to answer the chap who was asked about the build lubes, there you go, straight from someone who does it for a living. Classic Mini Garage. One thing I will say is that if anyone is doing an engine build, then send your new, normally rubbish, oil pump to AC for the zero tolerance treatment. Thanks, Classic Mini Garage. Actually, you don't send it to me. Okay, so I don't actually want your pumps. The way you do it is you contact Ross at Thomas Classic and Modern, and Ross sells them exclusively for me. Other people do sell them, but it's mainly Ross. So Ross buys a load of pumps. He uses them in his own engines, but he also sells them for me. And he does me a favor because I don't have enough time to do all the postage and stuff. So he's helping me out. So that's why I don't want your pumps. Please go to Ross, and Ross will sell you a pump. Currently, Ross has no stock. I know that because I've got a pile of them sat on the side, which I'm trying to get done. So that's all my fault. You blame me, not Ross. All right. My problem is I've had such a busy year with tuning. Everything's got severely backed up. Okay, so and I'm just trying to work my way through stuff now that the tuning season's finished. So Ross knows I've apologised to him again. I'll apologise again because that's all I'm doing at the moment. Sorry, telling people sorry that I can't have stuff. But It's it's been a hell of a year. Anyway, okay, so Pete Holmes, is there a rule of thumb for plug gaps? I'm running a 0.8 ohm. Does that automatically mean I can go to 35,000 Triumph 1500 twin carb? Yes. You want to go bigger, and that's fine. 35,000. If we knew the compression ratio and whether that engine was standard or not, well, perhaps we could say that might even be 40. But certainly go straight to 35.
Yeah, and be precise about your measuring.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so it's the thing that Darren likes to do, and it's the thing that I like to do. We like to hold the spark plug up on the, by holding the feeler gauge, and the plug should stay on the end tight. Okay, Classic Mini Garage. Just thanks, Ross. And he uses Millers. Okay, fine. Stefan Mini Cooper. I'm going to my job. Thanks again for live stream. Okay, no problem, Stefan. Enjoy your shift. Darren Robert Shaw, my Innova 5568 has a clamp to measure dwell. My 65D is electronic, so would I just connect this clip anyway and check in my time? Is it just hanging around? Could cause interference. Okay, Darren. The point is, you don't need to check your dwell. You would only check your dwell on a 65D if you thought there was a problem with the distributor, because that is a variable dwell dizzy. So by all means, you can connect that spare lead to the negative of the coil, and then it will give you a dwell reading. Okay, and that should be smooth, and it should track up and down with the RPM. So it should be 50, 55 degrees at sort of 5,000 RPM, and it should be something like, I don't know, 18, maybe even 15 or 20 when it's idling. All right, so, or 22, something like that. It's around those figures, but it's quite low, and it goes quite high when you rev it. So yeah, the 5568 is a good timing light, but generally speaking, when I've got an electronic dizzy, I only use the dwell to tell me what type of ignition system it is, whether it's a fixed dwell or it's a variable dwell, but I know the 65D is a variable dwell. Okay, Ian Moore, aluminium rockers versus forged rocker arms. Which is better in respect for longevity and servicing? Aluminium rocker arms have no place in a high mileage engine. Ballpark, simple, easy. I'm sure Ross will agree with me on that one, being the mess he's taken off a few engines lately. But we'll see if he comments on that when he comes back on. But yeah, aluminium rockers, not for a road car, right? You want steel. I don't have to be forged. You want steel rockers for a road car. Anything that's got to do high mileages.
Hopefully with correct ratio.
Yes, with the correct ratio, absolutely. Mark C, EFI is amazing, but the number of sensors that are required usually results in it being cheaper to buy a modern injection engine than use a conversion kit. Yeah. So, it's, I don't think there's an easy answer to injection. Yes, it's better, but only if you spend the money and make it better. I'm not a Luddite, I like technology. But for the average person who's got an average budget, injection is not the thing, I feel.
Well, and if you get it tuned well with an SU, it can run just as clean as an injection car can.
Yeah, so when it comes to passing the emissions, I've quite frequently have them sat at Lambda 1, which is what you would have an injection car run at. It is possible, and Darren's done it, I've done it, but only when the cars are right, the engines are good, and the carbs are good, and all the rest of it. If there's anywhere, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah. The single point car I had in my garage here for repairs, when I was done with all the work, it would idle at Lambda 104, 105. That was where it was programmed to be, and that's where it was.
Yeah. Okay. Ian Moore gets back, both modified for 998 fast road application. Right, it's a road application, so steel.
Steel.
No aluminium anywhere. And if you go racing, you have a spare set. Yeah, a spare set of aluminium ones. That's how it works. So you don't buy one set, buy two. Okay, Daniel Reed. Hi, I have an aftermarket front timing chain case that had no timing marks on, so I set my engine at TDC and just make a mark on the center of the case and a new mark on the front pulley. Will this work? Absolutely. As long as it's at TDC and the two lines, your two marks line up, perfect. Nice and simple. What we got? Okay. So slack 3 yard. I can't even pronounce that. Just call it slack. We just send an email to purchase a distributor coil. Yeah, depends where you are in the world. If you're in America, you want to send it to this man, Darren in Colorado. If you're even in other parts of the world, I usually get Darren to do it because he has a bit more time than me, I feel. And Darren is just as competent in doing distributor modifications as I am, and he's done my training, so he knows which way's up and which way around it all needs to go, and can answer all the technical questions just as well as I can. So if it's in the UK, you can send me a request for a dizzy. I'm still not taking orders at the moment though, because I'm still stacked out with work, so bear that in mind. And if you need it quick, that's perhaps where Darren can help.
Yeah, I've got one of each kind sitting here ready to go.
Yeah. Is this where we pan over to the distributor library?
Yeah, the library's a little low at the moment. I need to do another batch of curving to stock it back up again. But yeah, you should try to keep 3 different curves of each one on hand.
Okay. Amid's lad has just got back with 20 degrees at 2000. 52 bhp Sprite engine. Okay. 20 at 2000 is fine. So that curve, you got 10 at idle, you got 20 at 2000, and you've got 30 at 4000. That that's a straight off the shelf curve. That will work fine. Could it be improved? Potentially. But the point is that's probably 95% there already. So that curve sounds to me ideal for that application. FBA, I'm currently, I will use the last question here because I've just seen we're at 1:30, so I want to bring Ross back in. So I'm just going to do this last question. If you can drop out now, Darren, I'll answer this one, and we'll get Ross back in. So thank you.
Will do. See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Okay, I'm currently running a 123 Bluetooth Dizzy. Excellent Dizzy, well done. With a 3 ohm core and no ballast resist. Can I just switch to a 1.5 ohm core without any? Right, okay. So if you go to the 123 website, they make their own high energy coil. Use that. Use their coil, high energy coil, with the 123 Dizzy. Don't go and put a 0.8 ohm on it. Okay. So thanks, Ross. Appreciate you come back, and I also appreciate you going through there and answering people's questions in the chat below. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. So
no worries.
Ross has come back. So if you've got any questions about bodywork, now's the time to get back on it. I think there was a question about preparing paint and various other bits and pieces. So perhaps if that person was still there talking about primer, if you want to ask that question again, so Ross can jump on it, that would be excellent. Okay, Ian Pass. Hi, sorry if I've already answered. Where would you recommend to put the sensor bung on a Maniflow LCB 1994 HIF 38? Okay, so Sprite engine. So I would recommend at the bottom of the Y piece, but you need it slightly above center. So you might even need to put a dent in the floor. Ross will know more about this than I will, because Ross has got a lift and he's probably had to do it.
Yeah. Where I actually like to put them is just around about where the rear exhaust mounting is for the tailpipe. So in front of the back box.
Okay.
So
yeah.
pretty much as far back in the exhaust as you can get it, but you need it before the box so you don't get the pulsing back and
Yeah.
forth. And I just find there's a little bit more room there to get it up at a sort of 2 o'clock angle.
Perfect. All right. So I appreciate that, because I've never had to fit one to a Mini. I just tell people to fit and follow the instructions, but you've had to actually do it, so that's good.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, in that position, does it get fouled up? Do you have to clean it?
If you're using it not just for test purposes,
Yeah.
so if it's permanently fitted, yes, you will need to clean it regularly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah. So the closer you have it to the engine,
The
the
hotter.
less cleaning you'll be able to do. But you might get, you might get pulsing and things happening. So, as I said, listen to what Ross has said. If you're just using it for tuning, where he said is a good place to fit it, okay? Because it's effectively kind of in the middle of the system, isn't it? Is what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
The other
All
thing
right.
is with it, one thing that I have meant to try, and I've just not had a chance to do it yet, is you can buy a 90-degree adapter, which might help fitting in a Mini, because obviously the exhaust tunnel is so tight. So, but it's whether or not that would actually affect the reading that you get. I don't know.
Okay. Right, moving on. Peter Holmes just said, awesome, thank you. That's because we answered his question. We've got Keith Shire. Does the ethanol in today's petrol evaporate through fuel hoses? Only if they're open, I would have said. And that's if they're cracked. Yeah, so that's the wrong fuel hose. So I wouldn't say it would evaporate through a hose, but it will evaporate if it's open to air. Yeah. So it will evaporate out of float bowls in carburetors, and it will evaporate out the jet, and it'll evaporate out the fuel tank because it's open to air. Massimiliano, hi guys, I'm running a standard Metro turbo engine in my Mini. Should I go for a recurve Dizzy, or am I fine with the original 59 DM4? Greetings from Italy. Okay, so the 59 DM4 on the turbo is basically uses a black module on the slam panel of the Metro. So if you're using that, I can't remember if it uses a 0.8 ohm coil or not. But I would suggest you need to use a 0.8 ohm coil. And if that 59D won't fire that, then you need a 65D or a Power Spark equivalent 59 or a 65D that will fire it. But yes, the advanced curve in those distributors can probably be improved. I typically use a single spring advanced system for a boosted engine. I've done a few for Ross, and I think they've worked out okay.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, the advanced requirements for a boosted engine are get as much advance as quickly as possible up until the point boost comes in. And then you don't want any more advance, and then turn it off. Yeah. So it's as simple as that. Now, clearly, if you're in the digital world, then you want to put a lot more advance in and then haul it back out again once the boost comes in. But that's not possible with a standard Dizzy. So with a standard mechanical Dizzy, it's a compromise. So you can use a vacuum advance to great effect on a turbo engine, especially the turbo when it's off turbo. And you can swing a little bit more advance in at part throttle. But in most cases, a single spring Dizzy with a fast curve and then stopping when the boost comes on is ideal. Classic Mini Garage. Ross hates roller rockers. ... Fact. Do you know who that is, Ross?
That might well be somebody who's watched my channel and seen a couple of videos of late. Yeah,
Okay.
if any of you guys haven't seen that and you want to, head over to my channel, and there is a short video on there of some let's say badly worn roller rockers.
Yeah, I know the set you're talking about, so I saw the video as well. They were very baggy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so okay, Clive Millington. Hi. Do you work from home at all, and do you rebuild twin SU, or would it be Berlin services? Okay, so I do work from home part time. So, Clive, yes, I do rebuild twin SUs. It's your choice whether you want to send them to me or Berlin. If you send them to Berlin, they'll rebuild them to factory standard. If you send them to me, I'll rebuild them so they, you know, more suitable for fast road applications. So it's entirely up to you. But yeah, we can have a look at your requirements. Bill Beard, big thanks for you and the answers given to all the questions. No problem, Bill. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Back to the noughties. Best Loctite for crank bolts. I don't like lock tabs. Oh, there's a wise man. Don't like lock tabs. Yeah, okay. So Loctite wise, I tend to stick to 270, which is just the basic medium strength, right? A lot of people go, "Oh, you want 638 or 648?" That is a high strength, you know, thread locker. You can actually break bolts removing the damn stuff. So, you know, don't use 638 or 648 unless you absolutely need to, because that is, in some cases, a one-way fit. Yeah. So it goes in, it doesn't come out again. So I would only use 270. Yeah. Or an equivalent medium strength. That's all you need. If you're having to need more than that, then I think you've got other problems.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 270 is mine, my go-to for those. And I think I also use 243. I think it is as well, which is the nut lock version of it.
Okay. Would be a purchase of distributor and coil in the US. In which case, Slack, you need to go straight to Darren, and Darren will sort you out. So no problem at all. Contact Darren direct. You can either do that. He'll give you a means of contacting him in the chat if he's listening, which he will be listening. Yeah, there's some business there for you, Darren. So pick that one up. A Serious Engine. What's the best inlet manifold for a 1293 with an RS cam? I'm assuming you're talking about a single HI 44 carburetor. If you are, then I just go for the mini spares one, but I like to massage it a bit. So just smooth off the inside and make sure that everything's nice and radius and there's no sharp bits and everything lines up properly. But yeah, that's a great manifold. Boeing 747, that's quite a good name. I'm running a cam belt kit on my car that does away with the cam cover breather. I've been looking into using the fuel pump hole as a breather. Is this advisable? Now, there's a problem with using the fuel pump breather, and that's because it flicks oil up into that hole and you end up pushing oil up the pipe. So it is a convenient hole, but and what you have to do is baffle it if you want to use it. So you've got to make a baffle that goes on the inside so oil can't get pushed up there. That's a real problem. So just think about that. I've made them in the past where I've put the oil separator on from the clutch bell housing, things like that. But there's so much oil that it works up the pipe. So in reality, probably best to drill and tap something into that housing if you can, and if you can't, then breathe it out the other end of the engine. And if this is a road car, take it into the carburetor, and that will give you some vacuum, which will help. If it's a race car, then I would be advising you to use an vacuum sump system and suck it out via the exhaust. But it's up to you how you want to do that. But I always like vacuum in the sump because it gives a better ring seal. Ian Pass. Cheers, guys. Great info. No problem at all. We try and help. Okay, Massimiliano, yes, it uses a 0.8 ohm core. This is okay, so that's good. So stick with that one, but I would advise you to have it recurved. And if you want a bit more information about that, my suggestion is take a timing light and actually measure the advanced curve it's giving you, and then we'll be able to advise you, or I'll be able to advise you, or Darren will be able to advise you what you need to do and whether it needs curving or not. Key for the Shire. AC, is the engine back in your car? Yes. My car is back and I'm driving my EcoBoost and it's smooth. So all I'll say is it's working very nicely at the moment. So so far, I think I've got about 160 miles and the running's going very well and the oil is still clean, which is something it never was in the old engine. So clearly the old engine had more issues than I first thought. So the new engine seems to be very good so far. Fingers crossed. Rachel, don't keep Ross up too late tonight. He needs to get an early start on my engine build in the morning. I love it. You're being tracked by your customers. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's the lovely lady who had the unfortunate instance with the roller rockers.
Ah, okay, all right. Well, terrible things, roller rockers. Well, it's not the rollers that are terrible, but the design of them. Were those rockers ones that had bushes or no bushes?
They were bushed.
They were bushed. Okay.
But they were the early aluminium post ones.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So you know, it's one worth thing to remember is those bushes were designed for low lifts and low ratios. If you put the same bush and you put more load on it and move it more, it's going to wear out quicker. Remember this, okay?
Yeah.
So if anyone's building an engine you want long life, sorry, you need lower ratio and you need lower loads. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's why when I was building engines, 1.3 ratio was the highest I'd ever fit on a road engine. So they keep going.
Yeah.
And I also found, and this was by dyno testing, that I always got the best average torque. So from 2 to 5,000 RPM, I would typically get a better average torque than a 1.5 rocker engine. But the 1.5 rocker one would make more upstairs. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not arguing about that. It will make more horsepower. But horsepower doesn't move cars at 2,000 revs.
No. And it's where it's like everything, like we always say, it's where you spend most of your time driving.
Yeah. So Ross uses my 1.28 rocker in a lot of his engine builds. And there's a reason for that, isn't there, Ross?
Very much so. They work.
And
they last.
And they last, yeah. So there's a reason why people do stuff. And you know, Ross sees the benefit of these and he's tested them. And he's felt, you know, the way the car performs, and he likes what he sees. So he uses those in his car, in his engine builds. Now Ross builds more engines than I do, right? And will continue to do so. All right. So how many engines you got on the go at the moment, Ross?
Physically on the go is 9, and there's 14 on the board.
So that just gives people an idea of the sort of experience that Ross has when it comes to building engines, okay, and working with engines and customers and all the rest of it. So when people start saying, oh, this, that, and the other, and then they, you know, oh, you know, Ross has got an opinion. Well, Ross has got an opinion because he sees a lot of problems, all right, and he gets a lot of experience and he's learnt lots when it comes to road engines, right, and what lasts and what doesn't. So all I'm saying is, you know, we're not just sitting here in our armchairs being all grumpy. We're telling you because we see it, okay? And you know, I had my heyday of engine building many years before Ross, okay?
Yeah.
So I've seen it all. I've seen it all before. And when Ross shows me stuff, I go, "Oh yeah, that old chestnut." You know, the point is, you know, it's still happening. So all these things with rockers, you know, I had this years ago, and people were telling me I was talking out my arse and all sorts of things. But the point is, you know, if you want to have an engine that lasts a long time, you need to control the loads on things and understand what's going on. And the biggest problem with people when they try and make engines that last is they don't understand the loads and they don't understand the effects of the parts they fit in, and then unfortunately they have problems. Okay, so FBA, thanks guys for the great info and the videos. Really learned a lot since. One more question. What's your preferred lube for installing primary gears? Thoughts on using cam lube? Best from Germany. Cheers from Germany. Okay, that's a really good question. Do you want to answer that one, Ross?
Well, I can do, but it might mean you might be busy because I use your primary gear lube.
Okay, right. So,
but no, in all seriousness, if you haven't got any of AC's primary gear lube, it's good actually to see somebody asking that, because I bet 9 out of 10 people don't lubricate that when they put it on.
Yeah.
So that whatever engine building lubrication you're using, plenty of it on the primary gear bushes, definitely, and a little smear of it around the back-in thrust washer as well, definitely.
Yeah. So in terms of using cam lube, yes, that works. It doesn't work if you store it a long time. All right. So if your cam lube runs out, basically. So I tend to use a grease which I make up, and I supply to people. So if you come to me and want bushes done for your primary gear, it will come back with a little tub of pre-lube in there. All right, and that's what Ross is talking about, because he's had probably hundreds of those little tubs over the years. But the point is, I mean, I haven't sent you one for ages, Ross, so you've got to be getting down on it now. I would have thought, but my point is, it is, as Ross said, it's the right question to ask, because they do need a prelude. You can't just put in a freshly bushed gear on engine oil, because 9 times out of 10 it will pick up. All right, so you need a pre-lube in there. Okay, so back to the noughties. Thanks, AC, Ross, Darren. Got to go to work now. Okay, yeah, no problem at all. Massimiliano with the turbo. Okay, I'll check the advance curve. Thanks, AC. No problem at all. Mark C. Have there been any attempts on fitting a fuel evap management system, a requirement of modern cars? No. There was an attempt on the carburetor Sprite that had an evaporation system on it, but no one bothers on an aftermarket car. Paul Irvine, hi AC, it's Paul Irvine with the GTM. Watched a lot of your videos over the weekend. Hi Paul. Reset the ignition and carb adjustment, managed to get it running much better. Still would like to book a tune. Thank you very much, Paul. I'm currently finished for the season because if I keep going, Ross is going to throw things at me because I won't get enough done for him. So I've stopped tuning now for the winter. But please contact me next year. I'll restart again sort of end of February, March. So please contact me in good time, because I will get booked up. This year I had a 4-month, at one point I was 4 months ahead. So get in early for a booking. Rachel, we're not putting roller rockers back on, are we, Ross?
No, we're not. No, most definitely not.
There speaks the voice of reason. she knows. Yeah, definitely
100%.
not. Ross might be fitting some of my 1.28s. I don't know what build you're going to have, but whatever he'll fit will be a lot better than what you had. That's for sure. Darren Robert Shaw, can we have Ross's details, please, guys? I missed them earlier. Okay. What details you want? Contact details. Thomas Classic and Modern. You can find him on the internet, or perhaps before Ross goes home, he can write something in here about how he likes to be contacted in the chat, and then people can see that.
Yeah, I can do that by all means. Yeah, you can look us up on all the usual social media channels, but you will find us. Google us, no problem at all, or have a look at our YouTube channel by all means.
Okay. Wonderful. A Series engine. Is there any specific coolant you would recommend? This has got to be a Ross one.
In all honesty, I use standard blue antifreeze in everything I build. NPIs included with aluminium parts. but the key is to change it regularly. So every 2 years, regardless, antifreeze change. And I normally mix it about sort of 60-40, 70-30 water to antifreeze ratio. But I don't use pink, red, green, etc. I've only ever used standard blue antifreeze coolant in everything we build.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I've got no problem with that information. That's its key is don't leave it in. Change it.
100%.
Okay, Clive Millington. Hi, AC. I live very close to Salisbury. Where can I take my twin carbs? Okay. If you're on Facebook, Clive, send me a message on Messenger. Okay. Facebook Messenger, and then we can talk turkey. All right. I'm not putting my address details on here. No way. Okay. So, yeah, Paul Irvine again. Okay, thanks, and keep up the excellent videos. We will try to do that. And when I say we, that is me, that is Ross and Darren. We all have videos on our own channels, so we will endeavour to do that. Okay, yeah, maybe we won't worry about the last guy. Okay, so I think we've dried up the questions. Is there anything else that anybody wants to ask while Ross is here? Failing that, I think what I'm going to do, if there's no more questions, I will let Ross go to his bed. All I will say, Ross, is thank you very much for taking the time out, because I see you're actually in work and it's nearly 10 o'clock at night. So please, everyone, thank Ross for doing this, because he's actually gone back to work to be able to do this tonight. So I really appreciate that. For me, it's easy because it's my garage. But for Ross, he's actually in his workplace. So I really appreciate you coming on, Ross. Clearly, you was a big help to people. So we'll look forward to doing this again at some point.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you about that offline. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. So if there's anything else you want to add before you disappear, then do that now.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure. It's been great fun. Yeah, more than happy to do it again at some point if you guys want me to. No problem whatsoever.
Okay, all right. So if Ross disappears now, I'm going to bring Darren on, see if there's any further questions, and then we'll call it a night if there's no other questions. So thanks again, Ross, and I'll catch up with you as usual.
No worries at all. See you guys.
See ya. Okay, so Ross is gone. Darren, if you want to come back on, and if there's any more questions that you got for Darren and me, then I can sit here for a few more minutes. Darren's just coming back in now. Okay, all good.
Yeah, I like the bit about the roller rockers. That was fun.
I just love the customer. Don't want to be up too late. You got to work on my engine in the morning. Fantastic. But that gives you an idea of how busy Ross is. Customers, yeah. And so I've got him to say how many engines he's got. 14 engines on the go. That boy has got a lot of work on, and he's got a lot of people that are asking him to do a lot of expensive engine work. So if anybody needs an engine build, you need to join Ross's queue, because he's got a good reputation for doing it. He does use a lot of my components, and he uses Keith Carver's cylinder heads and rockers as well. So he uses all the best bits and pieces in his engines. So that's probably one of the reasons why he's got 14 of them queued up.
Well, and that's the kind of person you want to be building an engine for you, is somebody who builds it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Okay. Right. More questions are coming in. Okay, Mark C. What's the process for adjusting the damper oil thickness and the internal spring? Oh, who's going to do that? I'm champing at the bit. But do you want to do that
I'll
one?
let you.
Oh, you're going to let me. Okay,
No,
all right.
you're chomping on the bit. You're chomping on the
Okay,
bit.
all right. I'm champing at the bit. Okay, so it just so happens that I have a dashpot and a spring. So what I will tell you is, because I don't give away all my secrets, but the spring in the dashpot is the first thing you set. Okay, because if you change that while after you're changing everything else, everything changes. So the components in the dashpot have a symbiotic relationship. So the first thing you want to set is the spring. The second thing you want to set is the needle. And the third thing you want to set is the damper and oil. And when I say damper and oil, it's because they work as a combination. Okay. So that's the order that you do the tuning in. Dave Huddleston, a bit off topic, but I can't help getting depressed at the way the world is going on with these lunatic green agenda people. Is there a future for our cars? Well, that's an interesting question. So my own personal view is, yeah, there is a future, but the future will shape itself, because unfortunately what's going to happen is at some point the cars will dwindle to a point where the spares will be so expensive that people won't be able to afford them, and at that point they'll cease to be a viable option, and they'll just sit in people's garages or in museums at that point. That's a long way off yet. One of the things I do is I do my mobile tuning. Darren does tuning, and Darren's mobile as well, in the USA.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do it, well, twofold. One, we we can make some money out of it, which is everybody needs to do. But secondly, if we don't tune these cars, people won't drive them. Okay. Now, once we've tuned them, people drive them more, and what that means is they're driving them more. The spares get consumed, more spares get purchased, and it keeps the whole system running. If the cars are not being used, it's all going to stop sooner. So it is very important that people like myself go out and tune cars so that they can be driven. And we tune cars properly so they can be driven. And also, people realise that what we're doing is tuning them correctly so they run cleanly, and we are not falling foul of any regulations in terms of emissions, etc.
Yeah, and the cleaner the cars can be, the less people can complain about them in terms of their, the smell and pollution. It's like when you get them running right, they're just as clean as an injection car. They can be. Not always the case, but
Yeah.
Having them run well makes them usable. There's plenty of cars that people never drive because the parts are too expensive, and so they never get. The manufacturers don't keep making the parts, and that's it. And that's the end of it.
Yeah. So I would say, David, that the future is, it's not as ideal as perhaps we want it, but the point is what we have to do is to keep using the cars. That's the most important thing.
And also understanding how the fueling works. It's like if the fuel changes as it has changed since the invention of gasoline, whatever the next version of gasoline is going to be, we'll have to make adjustments to our carburetors in terms of the profile and the timing and all that stuff. So
yeah. So my job is to make sure that if the fuel changes, I can still adapt the carburetors to be able to use them and be calibrated to run with that new fuel, whatever that might be. So that's what I'm going to do as my part as keeping the cars running. And my network of tuners that I've now trained, I pass all that information on. So they get all that information so they can continue to do their work. Okay, Ryan, what difference would I notice in the cars running if there was no oil in the HIF 3844? I know each car is different, but just in general. Darren?
well, it'll go flat when you accelerate.
Yeah.
It just won't. It'll be a struggle to
Simple as
drive.
that. If there's no oil in it, when you open the throttle, the piston goes straight up, and that just causes a lean out. Okay, and then a flat spot, and the car just feels flat. It's as simple as that. So when you put oil in, that slows the rise of the piston and adds enrichment on acceleration. Okay. So and then you obviously need to match that rise rate with the demand for your engine, and that's what tuning's all about, to actually get that right.
Yeah, and to make a note of the damper oil, you don't have to check it very often, like once a year. As you pointed out before, AC, if you keep checking the oil in the damper, eventually you're going to remove all the oil in the damper by checking it. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those
That's
things you
very
fill up
common.
once a year.
Yeah, that's very common. Okay, so moving on. Mark C. Silly question then. What does the spring do to the motion of the damper? An educated guess is that it resists the lifting motion and no. Right. Okay. So, and this is the problem with. So no disrespect to you, Mark, but most people are like that. They don't understand the operating principle of the carburetor. Okay. So the spring works independently from the damper. Okay. So what the spring does is it provides a constant pressure. Okay. And you can have a rising rate pressure as well, but in this case, just assume it's a constant pressure. And what that basically means is it gives a certain, it will fix a certain rate of depression, which will form over the jet. Okay, because it will rise a certain amount for a given airflow. So the stronger the spring, the more airflow you've got to have to keep that piston up. And the stronger the spring, the greater the depression over the jet. So the more fuel it will pull off from the same needle and jet. Okay. So if you like, the spring sets the range that needle will operate in. Okay. And the most important thing to understand about the spring is peak power RPM. The piston should just be reaching full lift. If it's reaching full lift earlier, you haven't got enough spring pressure. Okay, so spring pressure determines the range that the needle operates. Okay, so if you have a weak spring, that needle will fuel leaner. If you have a heavy spring, the same needle will fuel a lot more, a lot richer. Okay, so effectively, you've got 3 springs. Each needle will give you 3 different fueling profiles. Okay, so if you have 100 needles, now you've got 300 needles. Okay, so it's not quite as simple as that because clearly there's only one spring that will match your engine. Okay, so if your engine needs a yellow spring, for example, to make sure it's open at the right point, then you can only use, a yellow spring, and you can't change the spring just to get a different fueling profile. The spring needs to be chosen for the air demand of your engine, and then the needle needs to be chosen to work with that spring, and then the piston damper needs to be chosen to work with that needle and spring. Okay, and then the oil needs to be tuned to work with the damper and everything else. This is why people go wrong, because what they do is, I've just changed the oil in my damper. Right, okay, why? Well, it was running terribly, so I've thickened it up and it's a lot better. Well, yeah, okay, so it might be better, but something else might not be right. Yeah, so you've got to go through in a logical order and understand what each one does. And the problem is that information isn't out there, and some people just don't realise what these bits and pieces do. Each one of those parts in that dashpot has a part to play in the way the carburetor responds. Okay, Matt Price, 9 and 8 with a tweaked head and cam and a HI38. What's a good starting point for a needle? I'd never start with a treble A because it's usually too rich at part throttle. Okay, so I would start with probably a double AF needle and then go from there. And it will probably be too lean at full power, so you need to add some fueling. All right. So my suggestion is get yourself a wideband, fit it in the car, and then start playing with some different needles. And you'll probably end up with a custom one to get it right.
Yeah. I was gonna say on the car that I tuned, that I got 60 to the gallon on. That was a standard high compression 998, and that was an AEM that gave me good steady speed fueling, but I still had to tweak it for the acceleration enrichment and full throttle.
So, okay, moving on. Mark C's got back. The spring is the only component I haven't changed. Yeah, there we go. So this is a good example. And based on your mention of it being changed first, I clearly have the wrong order. Yes, very common. I've seen people needles and get it right and then go and change the spring. It's like, well, you've just ruined the whole flipping thing. Now you've got to start again, right? So set the spring right first and go from there. Typically, if you've got a 1275 engine that's modified and it's over 80 horsepower, typically it needs a yellow spring. I say typically because it's called tuning, so we have to determine and check and all the rest of it. Yeah, I don't know what they need. Everybody says, "Oh, you know all this." No, I don't know anything. I do the same thing with every car. I measure it. That's how you determine what it needs.
Because you have no idea how the cam is going to come in. Like, when does it come in? When does it peak? You know, even the factory production cars, it's like there's, you know, several degrees of variation. It could be who knows where.
Yeah. A series engine. How big a breather hole do I need to fit a breather from the clutch housing to where the drop gears are? Well, normally I would open that hole out to its full extent in the transfer housing, the one where the breather bolts onto the top, as they have on the 1275 engine. So I just where the boss is, where it would normally bolt on. If you've got one that hasn't got the threads in it, you need to drill and tap that so that you can fit the breather. And then obviously the blanking plate at the bottom, I'd just drill that out. Ian Miles, have you had any experience with sustainable fuels? And are the adjustments needed minor or major? Okay. Personally, no, not yet. Obviously, we are dealing with E10 and E5. I do know that sustainable fuels are a thing of the future and they will be coming at some point. But once I get some in a tank and I have an engine in front of me that I can tune, then I can work on it. But unfortunately, I'm not seeing that yet because it's not freely available. It will come in future and we will have to work on it. And I will certainly do my best to make sure the SU will work with that. And as I said earlier, my job is to make sure all the people I've trained know this information as soon as I've got a hand on it. But I haven't seen it at the moment. I don't know if you have, Darren.
No, I was going to say, I mean, the ethanol is the only component that is, I would say, renewable, even though it's, you know, heavily processed off of corn. But that is a substance that's been introduced into the fueling, and we have seen the effects of ethanol, not just the damage, but the change in the timing and the change in the fueling and the NOx suppression. So we are seeing some of it. But I do want to point out that Goodwood is run on biofuels. So it is currently happening in racing, and they're racing classic cars on that fuel. So
yeah,
it is happening, and successfully too.
Whether they've got them running perfectly remains to be seen. Because my definition of perfectly and someone else are usually two different things, is what I normally find. Anyway, okay, so hopefully that helps you, Ian. I haven't had experience yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Mark C, all right, thank you both for your information about the spring. I have more experiment to do. It was one of the only topics that are not covered on in the on the road videos. No, and as I said, Mark, I won't necessarily cover all the information because that's what people pay me for when I train them. So not everything will be divulged. Okay, Darren, I'm sure bedtime. Cheers, guys. Gathered some really useful info tonight. Until next time. Okay, yeah, no problem, Darren. Thanks for coming on board. That's been excellent. Moving on, DMCN. Hi, guys. What's your thoughts on using ram pipes with no filters on a road engine? I don't like using no filters on a road engine that's used a lot. All right, so in reality, I'd fit if you want a ram pipe, there's no problem with that, and there's good reasons to have ram pipes. Cut a hole in your bulkhead, put a nice big box in there so you can actually get a suitable air filter and run with a ram pipe. But you must definitely use an air filter to stop any crap going into your engine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Ram pipes for sure, if you can fit them.
Yeah.
I don't know what the effect is on ones that you can get that are bent, to bring the air from around the front. But even those have filters on the ends.
Okay, so there's still 43 people in the chat, which is excellent, and it's the longest one yet. So any of you that haven't given us a thumbs up, please do so. I think I don't know how much longer you want to be on, Darren, but I know I'm getting stiff now. I've been sat here so long. So I think what we'll do is we'll say another 5 minutes, and then we'll probably call it a night. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So another 5 minutes, everybody, and then we'll disappear. But if anybody haven't given us a like, please do so. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay, A Serious Engine. Any thoughts on quick shift gear change? Okay. Yes. I built ML Motorsports gearboxes for over 20 years. Okay. All the cars that had quick shifts generally gave a problem. And the point is, the mini gearbox will only change gear at a certain speed. Now, if you try and change gear faster than it's designed, you'll end up damaging it. So a quick shift is not a quick shift. What you really want to call it is a short shift. Okay.
Yeah.
So the way to use a quick shift is to use it at half the speed of a normal gear lever. Okay. So move it nice and slowly, but for a shorter amount. Okay. And then you won't have any transmission issues. If you force it through the gears with a quick shift, you're going to wear out your synchros. That hasn't changed. Doesn't matter who makes them. If you abuse the gear lever, it will trash your transmission. So if you use it sensibly, then they won't make any difference to the lifespan of your transmission. But that generally means shifting at the speed that your transmission will shift at, not at the speed that you want it to shift at.
Yeah, it's a very good point. You can't force them to just break.
Yeah. So, if you wanted a recommendation on one, the KAD one is probably the nicest one. Works very well. As I said, treat it as a short shift, not as a quick shift. Okay, James Baron Scott, are 1.5 ratio roller tip rockers for road use. I'm using okay, I'm using an MG or a Phase 2 cam. I never like 1.5 rockers of any flavour for road use. Too many cam load wears, follower wear everything, and rocker wear as we had earlier, which is why we were giggling. So I can't recommend 1.5 ratio rockers for any road application, unless obviously you want to fit them and don't mind changing worn components. Okay. But my advice is stick to 1.3 or 1.4 even if you want to do that. But I don't recommend 1.5 for road work.
Yeah, the car I've got in my garage right now is a set of 1.5s, and I have to pull the whole engine out because I think it's worn out at the cam.
There you go.
You get the S3 engine, it's totally fine.
Yeah. I was doing this 20 years ago, and people were putting these rockers on, and we were pulling engines out with knackered cams all the time, and followers, everything. So not for road work.
Well, not for long.
Yeah, or not for you. No, yeah. So there's a slightly different question: is a 1.5 rocker good at making horsepower? Hell yes. that is not in question at all. They are superb at horsepower. Okay, but they're not necessarily the same for longevity. Okay, so Mark C, last one: oil breather, catch can, or feed it into the air intake. Road car always goes into the air. It always goes into the air intake or into the carb. You need a vacuum on the sump. You don't want positive pressure. Rachel, oh, superb. Ross is taking my quick shift off as well. Well, yes, he's absolutely right to suggest and to do that. So apologies if you didn't like that, but that's one that come from me as well, and he's seen it as well. It destroys the transmission. So he might be doing that for you because your transmission might be in a state where he's seen the wear due to that. So I'm not going to suppose that it is, but he's obviously taking it off for a reason. John Fotheringham, evening gents. What are your thoughts on pros and cons on light and flywheel for oval track use? Well, if you're track use and you're racing, you need the lightest damn flywheel you can get in there. So I'll be talking like featherweight, KAD aluminium with a steel insert, a grand's worth of flywheel. If you're racing, whatever the lightest that rules will allow. Okay, simple as that. But clearly, don't go cutting up an iron flywheel to use in a competition application because you might lose your feet. All right, don't take the risk. Steel billet or billet aluminium, properly made and engineered piece of kit for that application. There's no excuses. Classic mini garage. I've seen worn cams when 1.5 rockers have been installed. Yeah, absolutely. And you will continue to see that because they're not designed for longevity. In my view, they need a bigger follower and they need the right spring package and a different ramp rate to be able to cope with all that. I love Rachel. Ross is either a killjoy or a very knowledgeable man. I'm not sure which yet. Okay, I'll answer that for you. He's got a lot of knowledge based on experience. Okay, so he might come over as a killjoy and a spoiler of fun, but unfortunately, he's right.
I've had the same conversation with my customers about these things, and yeah, it sounds like a killjoy, but in the long run, it ends up being better off for their car and their wallet many times.
Okay, Matt Price, what are the main characteristic differences between knackered stem seals and knackered rings? Okay. Do you want to answer this one? This is the same for all engines as far as I'm aware.
It's worn out. That's it. It's just worn out.
Okay, so yeah.
It's like
Darren's giving you the the overview answer, but in terms of the difference,
yeah, one is going to be more noticeable when you're running versus when you're just sitting still revving it. Like with the rings, you can notice it in the crankcase and the blow by. So if you've got a way of testing crankcase pressure, like I know AC has a piece of kit that goes into the dipstick tube, and you can see the blow by. If you got blow by, it's going past the rings, so it's knackered rings. The valve stem seals, you can that is something correctable. You can go in there and do seals with the head in place, but usually by the time the seals have gone, you probably need to do guides and seats and all that stuff anyway.
yeah, agreed. So if you're at home and you notice these things, okay, if you start the car up in the morning and the exhaust clears its throat, you get a puff of smoke as soon as you start. I call it, it's like the car clearing its throat. It goes, a little bit of oil smoke comes out the back, right, and then it clears. It's your valve guides, and seals leaking down overnight, and it just burns the oil off and sends it out the back first thing. If it's rings, you'll tend to smoke when you're accelerating, and it might also smoke on overrun. So, and it'll be as you're going down a hill and then you touch the accelerator again, a big cloud of blue smoke comes out the back, it's rings. So valve guides tend to be smoky startups.
Yeah, and you usually will see it on top of the pistons too.
Yeah.
You can identify either a single cylinder or all cylinders. But either way, the answer is you need rebuilding, either in the head or the lower end.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rachel, love you too. Thank you very much, Rachel. Clearly, you're in good hands there with Ross. So, apologies if he's being a bit grumpy with you, but in terms of telling you what you need, but he's. I can assure you, he's doing right by you. All right. So he's going to make you an engine that you're gonna really enjoy. All right. That's the main thing, and it'll be reliable. That's the idea. Classic mini garage. It could be a combination of both. Yeah, it could be rings and it could be valve stem seals. Absolutely.
So I've
So
had a
if
lot
you
of
have,
success
so
doing
if
the
it's, yeah,
stem
if it's
seals.
smoking generally while you're driving it along, engine rebuild time.
Yeah, but again, it's worth trying to do the stem seals if you've got the time and you want to experiment. You know, you can get the new DuPont style stem seals, and they deal with ethanol
so
fuel.
the brown ones, the MPI ones, they're very good. Yeah. Okay. Hi Barry. See you're in there. Like my Jiffy. Yeah, his Jiffy engine's not very well. We were only talking about yesterday at the NEC. Stevie baby, what's the difference between an A series and a K series? Lots. There's too many differences to Google that one. One's aluminium, the other one's iron, one's 5 bearing, the other one's 3 bearing, one's wet liners, one's solid cast. They're not even, no, they're totally different. Barry Tilbury, he stripped the old comma engine tonight. So he's referring to the comma that I tuned. Yeah. So Barry's the chap that was driving the van when we was out on the road.
That was a cool van. I liked seeing that.
Rachel's just cleared up. He's not being grumpy. It was just a joke. Okay, that's fine. I like a joke as much as the next person. So I appreciate that. Totally respect his advice. Yeah, he is. He knows what he's talking about. So appreciate that, Rachel. Thank you. Should have seen. Yeah, Barry said we should have seen the movement in the rod to the crank. Yeah. A little bit knackered, was it, Barry? Stevie, babe, was you at the NEC? Yes, I was incognito yesterday, so I slid in and out, and nobody recognised me, which was good on one hand, but not good because clearly my profile isn't being managed very well. Yeah, okay. FBA, good night, guys. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next one. Okay, so the numbers are coming down now. We've got 36. I think we need to call it a night now because we've exhausted it, and it's the longest one yet, which is excellent. So really appreciate everyone joining us tonight, especially our guests. So thanks very much to Ross Thomas. So if you're still watching, thank you very much, Ross. And we will endeavour to get Ross back again in the future. I'm not sure it'll be every time, but what I plan to do is to try and try and break this up and maybe get some other people on as well. But I don't know yet. Anyway, and also thanks to Darren because Darren's. I think it's only lunchtime for you, isn't it, Darren? Or the afternoon now, anyway.
Yeah, just past. Easy for me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And obviously, again, thanks to everybody for joining and making it possible. And thanks for all the likes. So with that said, I think we need to wave goodbye. And I'll see you in, 3 or 4 weeks' time when we do this again.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And like I said, thanks to have Ross get him on.
Yeah.
And thanks for all the questions, guys, that submitted them.
I think we've been helpful. So yeah, anyway, everybody's saying so. Thank you very much. So appreciate that, guys. I'm going to call it a night now, and we're going to close the chat. So thank you very much.
See you guys soon.
See you soon.